Hi there, boys and girls, and welcome back to Conquering Math, where it all adds up. Today we will be learning about absolute value. Let's dive on in. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to find and compare the absolute values of numbers and use absolute value to solve real-world problems. The Common Core State Standards today are 6, NS C7C, and C7D. First of all, what is absolute value? Absolute value is the distance between a number and 0. For example, the absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is also 3. We can see this on a number line. We'll plot the points, positive 3 and negative 3, and we see that they are each 3 units away from 0. Therefore, they both have an absolute value of 3. The absolute value of a number x can be written as shown. Place a vertical line on each side of the number. Here's an example. In this case, we have the absolute value of negative 8. The absolute value of negative 8 equals 8 because negative 8 is 8 units away from 0. Hint: the absolute value of a number is never negative. Example number 1. Finding absolute value. Use a number line to find the absolute value of the number. For part A, we will need to find the absolute value of 5. We can start by drawing a number line and graphing the point 5. If we measure, we notice that 5 is 5 units away from the number 0. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. For part B, we need to find the absolute value of negative 20. Draw the number line and graph the point negative 20. Then we need to measure from negative 20 to 0, which is 20 units. So the absolute value of negative 20 is 20 because negative 20 is 20 units away from 0. Example number 2. Finding absolute value. We will once again use a number line to find the absolute value of the number. For part A, we will find the absolute value of negative 3.5. Start by drawing the number line and graph the point. Then measure from that point to 0. Negative 3.5 is 3.5 units away from 0, so the absolute value of negative 3.5 is 3.5. Now for part B, we need to find the absolute value of negative 0.75. Draw the number line and graph the point. Negative 0.75 is 0.75 units away from 0. So the absolute value of negative 0.75 is 0.75. Example number 3. Comparing with absolute value. We need to use a number line to compare the two values. For part A, we have the absolute value of negative 3 and the absolute value of 2. Start by drawing the number line and then graphing the 2 points. We notice that negative 3 is 3 spaces to the left of 0, while the number 2 is 2 spaces to the right of 0. Remember that absolute value doesn't care about direction, only distance. So the absolute value of negative 3 is greater than the absolute value of 2. Now for part B. The absolute value of negative 1.5 and the absolute value of 2.5. Once again, we will draw the number line and graph the points. And we notice that negative 1.5 is 1.5 units to the left of 0, while 2.5 is 2.5 units to the right of 0. Once again, remember that we only care about distance when talking about absolute value, not direction. So the absolute value of negative 1.5 is less than the absolute value of 2.5. Have you noticed a pattern so far? We'll try to find the absolute values in example number 4 without using a number line. Let's start with part A, the absolute value of negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2 because it is 2 units away from 0 on a number line. Part B, the absolute value of 5.5. The absolute value of 5.5 is 5.5 because it is 5.5 units away from 0 on a number line. Part C, the absolute value of 0. The absolute value of 0 is 0 because it is 0 units away from itself on a number line. Here's a hint to help you remember. The absolute value of a number is always equal to the magnitude of the number because absolute value doesn't care about direction, in other words, positive or negative. Let's wrap up with a real-world example. We will need to use absolute value to solve the following problem. Emerson is 25 feet above ground level in an office building. Maddie is 15 feet below ground in the parking basement of the same building. Which student is closer to ground level? We need to write down the student, that student's elevation, and then the absolute value. Remember that our students are Emerson and Maddie, and Emerson is 25 feet above ground level, while Maddie is 15 feet below ground level. So the absolute value of 25 is 25, and the absolute value of negative 15 is 15. This means that Emerson is 25 feet away from ground level, while Maddie is only 15 feet away from ground level. This way, we know that Maddie is closer to ground level than Emerson. Today you learned to find and compare the absolute values of numbers and use absolute value to solve real-world problems. The Common Core state standards today were 6 NS C7C and 7D. Now that you are familiar with these techniques, complete the independent practice problems in your guided notes packet. Then watch the independent practice solutions video to check your work. Thanks for watching this episode of Conquering Math, where it all adds up. I'll see you next time.